I watched the Republican debate, and I saw this guy, Ron Paul. He's my new hero. You just never heard this logic from someone who's actually going to run the country.
If you had to vote for one of them, is there one you would vote for? Who would you vote for? I mean, if you had to pick.
I'd vote for Ron Paul.
It was one of the most pointed moments in the early debate season. Wolf Blitzer asked Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul, a staunch opponent of a government role in health care, what should happen to a 30-year-old man who can afford insurance, chooses not to buy it, then becomes catastrophically ill.
He needs intensive care for 6 months. Who pays?
That's what freedom is all about, taking your own risk. This whole idea that you have to prepare and take care of everybody.
I mean, Ron Paul's answer was basically, look, I long for the days where people took care of each other, which, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, this is a fantasy.
So when Wolf Blitzer asked you, he said, would you just let him die? And several people in the crowd, you could hear some clearly yelling out, yeah, and applauding that, yes, we should let him die. What is your reaction to people in the crowd having that attitude?
No, I can't. You know, it's so overly simplified to explain a philosophy on how you take care of people in 30 or 60 seconds.
He says, I'm not going to spend $3 a month for health insurance because I'm healthy. I don't need it. But something terrible happens all of a sudden, and he needs it. Who's going to pay if he goes into a coma? Who pays for that? And Ron Paul says, well, in a society where you accept welfarism and socialism, he expects the government will take care of him. And Wolf Blitzer says, well, what do you want? And Ron Paul says, well, the guy should do whatever he wants to do. He's in a coma. How can he even know what the fuck he's supposed to want to do?
It narrows his choices a little.
It narrows his choices. So if you could just show the clip where, and this is the exchange that happens right after that, and you'll see if people.
But Congressman, are you saying the society should just let him die?
No.
Two.
You're right. Okay, but the crowd was not against this idea. They also cheered for the idea of. And we got a hold of some of the campaign posters each of the candidates have for next time. Look at some of these. Newt Gingrich, a proven record of leaving people to die. I mean, Ron Paul, a heartless bastard before it was cool.
What is your reaction to the crowd saying, yes, that's what we should do? It doesn't sound like...
In my answer, he said something about, you mean you should do nothing and society has no responsibility? I said, no. But I understand it differently. I want the maximum medical care and the maximum prosperity for everybody, and it doesn't come from big government welfare bankruptcies that we have now. What good is the government system of Medicare if it goes broke? I mean, our quality of care is down drastically in these last years. All this idea that government is always going to be there to take care of us, this whole idea of turning it around and saying, oh, you people who believe in freedom, you have no compassion. I believe nobody can compete with me about compassion. Well, I'm sure when he did that, he did it with local government, and there's no rules against that. That'd be fine. So that doesn't imply that you want to endorse the entire welfare state. You endorse all welfare. Anytime I challenge it, you're going to challenge the whole welfare system. No, it isn't authorized in the Constitution for us to run a welfare state, and it doesn't work. All it's filled up is with mandates, and the mandates are what we're objecting to. I want to repeal all the mandates, but yes, if there are poor people in Texas, we have a responsibility. I'd like to see it voluntary as possible, but under our Constitution, our states have that right. If they feel the obligation, they have a perfect right to. So don't always try to turn around and say that we who believe in liberty, we lack compassion. Because we who believe in liberty and understand the market, we're the only ones that really understand how people are taken care of, how they are fed, and how people have jobs. It's the market. It's never the government that does it. So this whole idea that there's something wrong with people who don't lavish out free stuff from the federal government somehow aren't compassionate enough. I resist those accusations.
Congressman, thank you.
somewhat hard to believe. The campaigns have notified.
In June of 2008, Paul's former campaign chairman, Kent Snyder, who Paul says talked him into running for president that year, died of pneumonia. Snyder had no insurance. Colleagues and relatives say a pre-existing condition made it impossible for him to get coverage. I spoke with Paul about the experience.
Did you try to help him? Did you want to help him at the time with
Absolutely.
his
He was a close friend of mine. He had worked with me for 12 years. We did everything we could because we knew he was having a struggle paying his bills, so we did what we could to raise as much money as possible on the internet.
Snyder's bills totaled more than $400,000, according to an aide for Paul. The aide says Paul's staff raised more than $50,000, but the rest of the bill was passed on to Snyder's estate. The aide says to his knowledge, the hospital has not yet tried to make a claim for that money. Analysts don't see this case hurting Ron Paul politically.
I think this story tells you who Ron Paul really is as opposed to the politicians who say one thing and do another. He's a guy who's pretty principled. He knows what he believes. He takes stands that sometimes can look really difficult to voters.
Does this make Paul and his followers seem heartless?
Some might be surprised that you don't take this more personally, given the experience that you had with Kent
How could
Snyder.
I take it any more personally? Because he was a friend and did what I could to help him. But it is something that, you know, was so unfortunate. So it was a tough time for all of us. I mean, our campaign really hadn't quite finished when he got deathly ill, and I've known him for so many years.
Well, we had you on about, I think it was late March, and I think we just scratched the surface, and that's really my fault. I should have scratched it more, but after I saw you in the debate, I said, you know what, this is a person who I really want to talk to a lot more.